Although some of them may be virtual. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. So wonderful to see all of you and be in your presence. To actually be here in your presence, even though I can't see all of your faces. And for those of you who are virtual, so glad you're with us today, and that we're in this hybrid experience. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Reverend Kathy, and I welcome you to Unity North Spiritual Center in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. So whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual path, you're welcome at Unity, and we're glad you're with us today. So I I want to say thank you and introduce our worship assistant, Rhonda Italiano, today. She's our licensed Unity teacher. And also our producer, her husband, Chris Italiano, in the back, who has been with us through the months. So glad you're here, Chris. And also our musician, Claire Van de Krummert. This is actually my first time meeting her live. We've been doing virtual services for the last year, and it's wonderful to see you in person. So she's going to begin our opening song.
And that means you all get to sing too. The words are going to be up on the screen, I believe, right, Chris?
You can stand if you like. Should we stand? Yeah. You're at home. Feel free to stand.
I promise in this moment to keep my heart wide open. With every breath I'm grateful, and as I greet each new day, there are 3 words that I say. With every breath I'm grateful. I am 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 grateful. And when I stop to see such love in front of me, with every breath I'm grateful. I keep my heart wide open. I promise in this moment, with every breath I'm grateful. I am 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 grateful.
Good morning again, everyone. It's good to see smiling faces in the sanctuary and in our virtual community. I am so grateful to my husband, Chris, that he was willing to get all the wiring set up and purchase the cameras and allow us to see each other in person and online. So thank you for that. As we are able to add more layers of complexity, we will be able to hear our virtual members a bit more, but for now we are very grateful that you're here. What a perfect song to get us started. And I think Reverend Kathy has an announcement for us, so I'll turn the microphone back over to her.
So I'd like to call Darlinda forward. As many of you know, Darlinda has been office manager 7 years, 8 years? 8 years. Come on up. And so she's now retiring, or just retired, August 31st. And she tried to leave several times before. And after I arrived, somebody else had been hired, and that didn't work out, so she came back again and said, I'll stay with you until you get your hip replaced, which was I got here in December, and that was in June. And then by then, COVID had started, so she said, I'll stay with you through COVID. And, so in June, it looked like we were going through that threshold, almost done, but anyway, so she gave her notice then, August 31st. But now the time is right. We both know it, and we've found someone wonderful too. But we want to give you this journal that people have signed. And not everybody has had a chance, so you may want to still pass it around too. And this is a card with a gift card in it and flowers.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm just going to set this down.
And I just want to say, Darlinda has just been fabulous support in my time here, and I know many, many people feel that way through the years. So thank you so much for everything, Darlinda.
Thank you. Kathy said I could say a few words if I wanted to, so last night that's what I was doing, thinking, what am I going to say? What should I say? So first of all, I wanted to let you know that I have really felt blessed by working for this community. I have met so many people, not just the congregants that are here, but started meeting people who are on Zoom. And sometimes there would just be people walk in and say, do you have any groceries I can have? Or do you have a gas card because I need gas so I can go to my appointment? And I felt like I met them. I was able to help them. We talked. I just met a whole lot of people and just felt very blessed by that. Some of you know how I ended up in this position. But some of you don't, so I'm just going to share that briefly. It was back in August of 2013, and the administrative assistant didn't show up for a couple of days. And Carol, our spiritual director at the time, said, Darlinda, would you mind taking over for a while till we figure out what's going on? And after she figured out what was going on, she asked me if I would stay, and I did. And so, yeah, as Kathy said, it's been 8 years now. And in looking back, I can see where Spirit has led me clearly all the way through this. Clear back from the time that I first found Unity, and that was Unity Minneapolis in Golden Valley. I don't even remember how I found it. That's how I know it was Spirit's hand in that. And then eventually, we built a church here in Coon Rapids. And then, as I said, I worked here, and now I feel Spirit's hand once again as I move on to the next thing I'm going to do. Many of you knew Louise Little, who passed in July, and she had Alzheimer's. She was 82, and she was a good friend of mine. And over the last few months, I was with her a lot, taking her to appointments, keeping her company. Her daughter lives in Greece, so she wasn't able to be here during that time. But what I realized is that that was a calling for me. And so what I plan to do, not right away, I'm going to take a little break, but what I plan to do is visit with people who are in assisted living places and keep them company. I've heard about some that have no immediate family, nobody visiting them, they're all alone. And I plan to visit with them, play cards, just talk, watch the Twins game if they're into baseball. Everybody knows I'm into baseball. But that's the next thing that I feel called to do, and as I said, I can see Spirit's hand in that, and that feels definitely the right thing for me to do next. So, but thank you all for your support over all these years. I appreciate it.
And I want to say, also we found a new great administrative assistant. Darlinda was actually doing two jobs. She was doing office manager and facility manager. And so we divided the position, and we hired a great facility manager, Larry Peterson, who's in the back. You want to wave or stand up, Larry? And so we're so thrilled to have you. And then our admin is Brandy Reynolds. So would you stand up? So we're so happy to have her. Some of you have met her online already. And she's, we know her by her persona of Wonder Woman. So anyway, I'm so glad you're with us, Brandy.
I'm very, very happy to be here.
Great.
Thank you.
At this point in our service, we will have some prayer time. We are not going to do prayer requests out loud at this point, but we are going to pause for just a moment and honor whatever may be weighing on people's hearts, whatever gratitudes they may want to send out. So whether you are here with us in person or virtually, we are going to pause for just a moment. We're going to take a deep breath. And we are silently going to think to ourselves, whatever's weighing on us, whatever we want to say thank you for. And we are going to have gratitude, knowing that those prayers are answered, knowing that we have been heard, knowing that all is well. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mother, Father, God. And so it is. Amen. Continuing with that prayerful energy, we are going to share today's daily word. The word for today, Sunday, September 12th, is guidance. I open my mind and heart to receive my guidance. Sometimes I have insisted on figuring things out for myself rather than asking for anyone's help. Over the years, I have learned the value of asking for guidance and sharing what I've learned when others ask me. As we exchange ideas, we may tap into a higher wisdom that had not been apparent to either of us alone. This wisdom is not outside myself. It is a still small voice, mine to call upon at any time. I am always able to ask for guidance to show me the way forward. I access my inner guidance by watching my mind and heart in prayer. Then I watch and listen, remembering that divine guidance may come in a familiar way or perhaps an unexpected way that will surprise and delight me. From Isaiah 55:9 we read, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." The word for today is guidance. And with that, I'm going to ask Claire to give us some music to prepare for meditation.
And once again, you have the opportunity, if you feel you'd like to, sing along.
There is light.
As we come together again for the first time in many months, we may be thinking about new beginnings. So I invite you to relax into your chairs. Take a deep breath and let your eyes gently close. Simply breathe. And then imagine that you are waking up after a difficult night. You finally got a few hours of sleep, and now it is time to get up. The storm has passed. It is as if a tornado has left a mess, but the big danger is over. As you look around, you notice that some things are ruined. The tornado flattened them beyond repair. However, other things are still salvageable. You get up and you begin to sort things into piles. One pile is for the things that have been ruined by the storm. They will be thrown away. They will be burned. The next pile is the things that you will keep. Things that can be repaired, washed, used again. You need them. You will keep them. As you continue to sort through things, you notice that you need a third pile. These are things that are not ruined, but you don't need them any longer. Clothes that don't fit. Household items that you don't use. Articles that were useful once, but not anymore. These you put into a pile to be given away to someone else who needs them. You look around you with a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. In one pile, you see things that you love, things you will use, things that you will keep. What are they? What's in that pile? Silently list a few of those things to yourself now. What will you keep? You see a pile of things that are broken beyond repair. They will be discarded. Look at them. Examine a few things in that pile. What will you release? Name a couple of those things silently to yourself now. What needs to be discarded? Finally, your eyes land on the pile of things that are salvageable, but you personally don't need them anymore. These are things that don't fit, things that were useful for a time, but not now, not again. This pile will be passed on to be useful to someone else. What do you have in that pile? Think of a few of those items now. We all know what it is like to pick up the pieces after a storm. We have moved to new homes, started new jobs, woken up the day after we ended a significant relationship. What matters is that we do wake up, that we do take stock, that we do move on. With one more deep breath, with one more look at our piles, with the realization that we still have some more sorting left to do, we resolve to keep going. We begin again. When you are ready, I invite you to follow the sound of my voice back into this room, this time, and this place. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes.
As you probably have heard, Reverend Kathy has a theme today, since we're all back. Well, a lot of people are back, and we're kind of doing a new groove. So Reverend Kathy suggested this song, and I thought, wow, that's so much fun. I hadn't played this one before, and it was done by the Little Rascals back in late 60s. So if you remember the words, once again, you can sing along. On a Sunday afternoon, really couldn't get away too soon. Can't imagine anything that's better. The world is ours whenever we're together. Ain't a place I'd like to be instead of grooving down a crowded avenue, doing anything we like to do. There's always lots of things that we can see. We can be anyone we want to be. Life was happy people we meet, grooving on a Sunday afternoon. Really couldn't get away too soon. We'll keep on spending sunny days this way. We're gonna talk and laugh our time away. I feel it coming closer day by day. Life would be ecstasy, you and me endlessly, grooving on a Sunday afternoon. Really couldn't get away too soon. Ecstasy, you and me endlessly, grooving on a Sunday afternoon, grooving on a Sunday afternoon, grooving, grooving.
All right. Well, so there's a little screen by my side here, and I can see all of you online, all of you virtual, so I don't have to turn around and look behind me. So this is fantastic. Just fantastic. So I want to start with 2 grandparent stories in honor of Grandparents' Day today. The first is that after a grandmother got her grandchildren into bed, she put on a pair of old socks, and she put on a droopy blouse, and she began to wash her hair. But then she could hear the noise in the kids' room getting louder and louder. They were more and more rambunctious. Pretty much it was wearing her nerves thin. So she wrapped a towel around her head and she stormed into the room, and she said, she told them that they needed to get to bed. She got them into bed after a very stern lecture. And on her way out of the room, she heard the 3-year-old say with a trembling voice, "Who was that?" Well, a couple of grandparents decided they needed to go look for a new truck, and they took their grandson Seth with them to a nearby town where they finally found a great Chevy Suburban. So they bought it, and they stayed and hung out in the town for a while, but then the weather turned very bad, so they decided to spend the night there after talking to Seth's parents. And they spent the night, had a great night, and the next morning they took their new Chevy Suburban back to town, and then they had to rush Seth to school as had been planned. And his grandmother took him into the room, and to her great embarrassment, because he was late, he said to his teacher, "Teacher, I'm sorry I'm late, but Grandma and Grandpa bought the bourbon and then they couldn't drive." So we honor and bless all grandparents today. Well, I said to someone about returning to our spiritual center and beginning hybrid church that we will all just have to get into a new groove. And then I thought, oh, well, there's a talk title, A New Groove. So thanks for doing some songs that work with that title today, Claire. For fun, I looked up the definition for groove, and here are several. The first is a dull routine that does not change, which is why you need a new one. And more applicable, a state in which you are able to do something well and easily, especially because you're doing it often. And two more, an enjoyable or exciting experience. And finally, a pronounced enjoyable rhythm. So we begin by affirming a new groove, an enjoyable, exciting experience with a pronounced and harmonious rhythm. And the words groovin' and groovy apply as well. Groovin' is the act of being groovy. And groovy means marvelous, wonderful, excellent, awesome, cool, also hip and trendy. So we can affirm that's us. How many of you, like me, used to say groovy a lot back in the 60s, 70s? Yeah, somewhere the word just sort of disappeared, as they tend to do, but it was a great word at the time. Well, in Unity terms, being in the groove is another way of being in the flow of life, as the late Unity minister and author Eric Butterworth put it, being in the flow of life. He mentions the example of a man who sat brooding at his desk one night. He was upset because he had been very suddenly dismissed from his job after serving for that company 20 years. And so he sat in despair, despairing about the fact that he might not be able to find another job at his age, and that he also might not be able to afford to live on his income. And as he was having these thoughts, and the worst was just feeling not needed anymore, feeling that he was through, washed up, finished, useless. And in that moment, a little spider crawled across his desk. So he unconsciously swept it away, and then suddenly he's looking at it in awe because it had spun a strand that could support its weight, and then it swung gracefully down to the floor. And he thought, if this little creature can tune in to some mysterious resource and have such a creative response to a crisis, then why can't I do that? And so the minute he asked that question, he got an answer, and it came dramatically. And it was that he must have gotten out of his own natural flow, or this situation could not have come to him to begin with. And the fact that he was so disturbed by it also proved it to be true. So getting himself synchronized in consciousness with the flow and the realization that his good did not come to him but through him, might not get his job back, but it would most certainly move him forward to something better. So with a new consciousness of the flow, and with mind and body processes synchronized with the flow, the man went on to new security and creativity. He'd always wanted to write, and so write he did. Now, maybe not like Hemingway, but he wrote, he sold what he wrote, and with his retirement income, he managed to create and achieve an economic security that he had never known before. And all this because he was now consciously and joyously in the flow. So we had a giant pause in our live church experience with COVID showing up and completely changing our whole world and our individual lives. It threw us out of our usual flow, first with a shutdown, to our shock and dismay. Remember how it felt to find grocery store shelves empty, to wonder if we were going to have toilet paper even. It seems funny now to think about it, but it was so sudden. And then the more we learned about the virus, the more frightened we became. I remember having thoughts that I needed to get my things in order for my sons in case I got the virus suddenly and wouldn't have time to do it. I figured it might take me because I have asthma. So some of us faced our vulnerabilities and our mortality. When we were taking it a week at a time then here at Unity North. We closed in mid-March of 2020, and for the first 8 months, I created videos on my cell phone from home of my Sunday lesson. Then I would send it to Wanda, our board president, and she would convert it and send it to Darlinda, who mailed it out to everybody. So it was a team effort. And at the same time, we kept thinking, well, maybe we'll open by the summer. So we kept going with that in that mode. And then we actually planned a date to open, which was this weekend a year ago. And it just kept getting worse. Things kept getting worse. So we too, like the little spider, had to get into the flow of this mysterious resource, the divine, to respond to our crisis. Along with so many people, when we first closed, I immediately began working from home. And I also jumped onto many webinars to educate myself about virtual church and about Zoom. And thanks to Chris Italiano and flexible worship assistants and musicians, we began Zoom services and have been at it for almost a year, which nobody would have ever dreamed. And we have been happily surprised by new people showing up virtually. And some of that I've known from former churches, just wonderful to see you every week. And, coming back today, we could not just return to an old groove, but we had to bring what we'd learned with us, along with our new virtual friends. And now those of you also who aren't ready to come back can still come virtually, and that's a blessing too. So this hybrid church experience, both live and virtual. And we were compelled to make the change because the virtual world is here to stay. It's not going away. And I think Chris Taliano, throughout this entire time and before this time, was a lone voice crying in the wilderness about that. And now what he envisioned with our technology is coming to pass. Thanks to him, he figured out what equipment we needed. He gave us a quote, he purchased it for us, and he was in here many hours this past week installing cameras and cables. He was with his neighbor, electrician friend, who climbed up in our very dangerous attic that nobody wanted to tackle. He was up there for 5 hours. He said it was his first time in a church, I guess, in a long time, and he was up there with his shirt off, cussing and swearing. So anyway, let's show Chris some love and appreciation. Thank you for making this possible. So, and please help us affirm the right sound person going forward. We need a sound person and some volunteer support in that arena. So we had to jump into a whole new flow of life. The river widened, so to speak, and we are now in a larger flow. And that may not be apparent at first, since there's still a fair percentage of our congregation staying away for the sake of safety, and perhaps an even smaller percentage have left. I will say that always happens after a new minister arrives and begins to settle in. And I came in December of 2019, and then to make it more complex, we had COVID on top of that transition. But we're grateful for those of you who are continuing this journey with us. Your support and dedication have been and continue to be such a blessing, not only financially to keep us solvent, but spiritually and emotionally. You've made a huge difference, and we thank you. So it was a sunny summer afternoon, and down on the beach, a group of children were putting the finishing touches on a sandcastle that they were building. And it was a magnificent structure. It had turrets and moats and a drawbridge, and had been decorated with shells. There was only one problem. The tide was coming in. What should the children do? Well, this is the first part of a modern parable, and I'm going to leave you hanging, and we'll revisit the sandcastle in just a little while. So I mentioned being in the groove, the flow of life. And being in that flow from within is not easy to grasp at first. For most of our wisdom and experience, gleaned from the outer world around us, would seem to contradict it. Emerson said that we must unlearn the wisdom of the world, lie low in the divine circuits, and by so doing, open the door by which the affluence of heaven and earth streams into us. Let me say that again. Unlearn the wisdom of the world, lie low in the divine circuits, and by so doing, open the door by which the affluence of heaven and earth streams into us. Now, he's not suggesting we forsake all cumulative wisdom, just facts that lead to limitation. And I love how he says, lie low in the divine circuits. This to me is staying centered in the flow, the force, the groove that moves us beyond resistance into positive change. Well, David Sarnoff, back in the early 50s, called his researchers into his office, and he said to them, I want you to create a black and white videotape program with compatible color. And they were speechless that he had the audacity to ask for something so impossible. And on the way out of the room, one of them was heard saying, wouldn't it be wonderful to have an imagination that was so completely unrestrained by a knowledge of the facts? However, they did unlearn their great wisdom, and television, the television that we watch today, has evolved from their creative achievement. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." Free from living at the mercy of the world outside and the consensus trance. Free to let God be God in us. Free to get into the flow of the universe of life, light, substance, perfect divine order. We're always in the flow of life, just as we're always in gravity, and gravity is always in us. We may, though, and often do, get out of the awareness of the flow of our good from within. But we can turn our thoughts away from tension and strain and let go and let the flow of life unfold. One of the aphorisms of Patanjali says, as the removal of earth by a farmer digging a ditch opens up a channel for water to flow to his crops, so the removal of obstacles by the student opens up a channel for cosmic energy to flow into his or her being. So removing those obstacles so we can birth the kingdom of God, Christ consciousness, and birth our true self takes new forms and new ways of doing things, new approaches. Maury Brinkman once said, "We are all in favor of progress, providing we can have it without changing." Isn't that the truth? People want to hold on to the old way of doing things and maybe add a new twist, but no, a new consciousness means letting go and getting into a new flow, a new groove. Speaking of letting go and embracing the new, remember Mark Twain? You may remember this. I love this, so I've told it before. But he moved to Carson City, Nevada. And he wrote a letter home, and it said, "Carson City is a den of iniquity, full of wine, women, and song, not a place for a good Presbyterian. Therefore, I no longer am one." He was willing to adjust and get into the groove, the flow of a new life. No matter where we move, what job we take, what church we attend, how we style and clothe ourselves, or whom we marry, we still take the old us along. Only the outer is changed. Wherever we go, there we are. Sometimes new circumstances call for new things, such as new clothes, new equipment, and new forms. So an inner change must go along with the outer one. Resisting change can keep us from being in the flow of life. One form of that is fear and indecision. So I have sort of a dramatic story about the flow of life and an experience that I had. I wrote about it in my book called The Unorthodox Life, Walking Your Own Path to the Divine. And I'll actually be teaching a class on my book in October on the 4 stages to awakening. But anyway, I wrote about this story. So in 1996, I experienced a year of profound loss that culminated with the passing of my mother. And so during that last 4 months of her passing, or before she passed, I was in deep grief. And one night, I prayed this prayer. I went to pray a prayer, and what happened is I heard it coming through my mouth to Mary. And I was stunned. You know, I'd always loved the Divine Mother, but I hadn't really had much focus on Mary at the time. And also the prayer didn't come from me, it was prayed through me. And it's the first time that it ever happened in such a way. And from that moment, she was with me. And I had all kinds of synchronistic experiences, one right after another, especially in the first few weeks. The very next night, I was at a gathering and somebody told me they saw her standing behind me. And I first thought, well, thank you for sharing. But then it just kept coming. And I had this little charm that I'd had for years. It was a Madonna and Child. And it had been given to me by my former father-in-law, who I loved dearly. And he had taken it to Italy and had it blessed by the Pope at the time. And he gave it to me. And it had been missing for a few years. And that week, there it was on my dresser, just sitting on my dresser. And then I got a piece of mail from a friend in Florida. When I opened the envelope, out fell these pictures, and they were images of an office building in Tampa where the windows were reflecting the light in such a way that there was a very vivid image of the Mother Mary. And she didn't send me a letter, she just sent me these pictures. And it was, you know, right in line with all these other things. And then more experiences kept happening. And as they continued to happen, you know, I began to realize she was completely for me. She was present for my mother's death and for the entire year of change and transition. And her guidance provided the impetus for me to enroll in the program at the University of Creation Spirituality in Oakland, founded by Matthew Fox. I ultimately made the move there 1 year after my mom's passing. But before I did, though, I was in this state of complete resistance and indecisiveness. I was totally out of the flow of life. And I had been elected to a national position on the executive committee of what today is called Worldwide Unity Ministries. Then it was the Association of Unity Churches. But I was wrestling with a dilemma that I was facing in regard to the pursuit of either positional power or spiritual power. My heart was drawn to Matthew Fox's University of Creation Spirituality, which honored the feminine and the Divine Mother, while my head screamed at me that I could make a huge difference, because in this position I was in, I was one of 7 on this national board setting policy for the entire unity movement. And I thought, well, I could make such a difference. And one day, I went to lunch with a minister friend. And we're sitting at lunch, and all of a sudden her eyes got wide, and she said, "Kathy, I have to tell you something." She said, "I had a visit from Mary last night, and she told me she has a message for you. If you said the words that you just said." And I can't remember what those words were now, but they must have had something to do with the quandary I was in. And she said, "The message is that you are in a tractor beam, and all you can do is surrender, and everything will work out beautifully." Well, that may not sound like much, but I was utterly speechless. The word tractor beam resonated within me, and my eyes burned with tears, because it was a very unique expression that my mother used often to describe to me the compelling cosmic forces that urge us forward on our path. And it referred to the gravitational force field of a space station pulling one in like a magnet. It was one of my mother's very favorite metaphors. So the moment I heard the message, I knew it was deeply personal and that I was to resign from positional power and continue my journey following my heart into a deeper awareness of God as Divine Mother. And that's exactly what she calls us to do, to know more of the divine for the greater good of all. And for me, it also ultimately deepened my unity teachings as well. So that was a profound experience for me of once again finding and immersing myself in the divine flow of life. You know, after deep grief, I was once again in a new groove. So we started with a modern parable. It was a sunny summer afternoon. Down on the beach, a group of children were putting the finishing touches on a sandcastle that had turrets and moats and a drawbridge and shells for decoration. But there was one problem. The tide was coming in. So the children ran in despair to their parents. But further up the beach, a second group of children are working. And these children have seen the coming tide. And they've begun to work on a new castle higher up the beach above the tide line. And it's a newer, flatter structure, more resistant to wind and waves. They only hope that it will still be there when they get back the next day. But standing on some high ground above the beach is a third group of children. And these children are looking out to sea. And they've noticed the first sign of an impending storm. They can see that the storm is going to wipe out both the traditional castle and the newer design. And they too want to play together and to build something, but they decide to run with the tide and the storm and draw patterns in the sand to form their castles, to embrace change and incorporate it into their game. So personally, which group are you in? Something to think about. Which group are you in? I believe collectively we are now in the third group. We're willing to let go and let God show us the next step. We've had courage and persistence through the storm of this past year and a half. And now we're called to a hybrid church, embracing and incorporating change and having a deeper faith and a spirit of adventure as we move forward in the flow of life, a new groove despite outer circumstances. So I invite you to keep affirming, I am now in the flow of life. I am now in the flow of life. And you can also add, and I am groovy. So God bless you. Thank you so much.
Feeling groovy? Okay. Slow down, you move too fast. Gotta make the morning last. You just tripping down the cobblestone, looking for fun, feeling groovy. Hello, lamppost, what you knowin'? I come to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no rhyme for me? Doodle-doo-doo-doo, feeling groovy. Got no deeds to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled, drowsy, ready for sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Life, I love you, all is groovy. slow down, you move too fast. You gotta make that morning last. You just picking down the cobblestones, looking for fun, feeling groovy, looking for fun, feeling groovy. La 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 da da la da, looking for fun, feeling groovy.
Well, this is the point in our service where we bless our offering. Just in case we're out of practice, we do have envelopes in the back of the sanctuary. If you are leaving a check or cash gift, you're welcome to use envelopes. If you prefer the online method, you are certainly welcome to continue that. There are buttons behind me, I think, for us, and QR codes for our virtual friends, so please do take advantage of that. As Kathy said, we are very grateful to have weathered the storm financially and otherwise, so thank you for that. And now, if you would please join me as we say the blessing of the offering together. Divine love flowing through me now blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I am grateful. Amen. And now I think Claire has some music.
My gift goes forth on the wings of love, and it lands where it can heal and bless. It returns to me, multiplied 1,000-fold, as the universe says yes, yes, as the universe says yes.
We are so happy to be back to live services. Our 8:45 service has also returned. If you would prefer a smaller, more intimate group, that is at 8:45. The 10:30 service is a hybrid. That means that we have people in the sanctuary live, and then we have our virtual friends as well. Our youth do meet at 10:30. And again, they have the option of being over in the fellowship hall in person or to continue to meet via Zoom. Safety protocols and requirements are available online at unitynorthmn.org, or they are posted on the walls in the building here. Family Promise is back again. We are hosting September 12th through the 18th. If you are interested in volunteering, please contact Kathleen by phone or email. Her contact information is listed here. Our Good For You Days kickoff event will be coming up on Friday, September 24th at 7 p.m. Reverend Kathy is going to provide a class she is calling Astrology in a Nutshell. So if you are interested, whether you are a beginner or a more serious student, you're welcome to come and see what she has to say about astrology. Good For You Days are coming up. This is our annual fundraising event that begins on Friday, September 24th at 7 p.m. and continues through October 1st. Good for You Days are a healing fair where we have an opportunity to have consultations with intuitive readers and receive the services of energy workers and explore a variety of classes that are very interactive. So most of those events and sessions are available online. Please visit our website for more information about that. Carl Schlotterbeck is teaching Foundations of Shamanic Practice. That begins on Tuesday, September 21st at 7 p.m. And they will be examining the shamanic worldview, our relationship with creation and our spirit allies, and basic practices and tools. So if you want to learn how to journey or establish relationships with your power animals and spirit guides, please join Carl for that course coming up. There are still opportunities for ushers for our early service. We do need a few more people in that capacity. So if you would please see Cindy or Darlinda if you are available and willing to help in that way. John Ice is our prayer chaplain this morning. He is virtual. So Chris has his phone number listed here. You are welcome to give John a call if you would like some prayer support this morning. Finally, we have note cards in the lobby for our graduating YOUers. You know that this is a long and well-loved tradition here at Unity North. When our YOUers graduate, we send them off with some love notes. So there are boxes out there on the table. So please do take a moment and leave a note in the box for each of them. And I think it's time for Reverend Kathy to share the prayer for protection.
So let's all say it together, a prayer for protection. Together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. I just want to thank everybody today. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Chris. A special thank you to Claire. So wonderful music today. Let's give them a hand. And now we'll do our peace song. We won't stand and form a circle. If you want to stand where you are and just stay in place, and feel free to raise your hands at the point toward the end if you like. So let's join in with our peace song together.
Let this be the moment
we've all become fairly accustomed to our social time. Unfortunately, with our return to the sanctuary, we're not able to do that today. So as we said earlier, as we add more layers of complexity, we hope that that will return, but we're not able to do that today. So we do ask that people leave the sanctuary. We are not having snacks today, so we do ask you to leave the sanctuary, continuing to social distance. Thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again next week. Indeed.
I'm not showing up.
I have this fear that this candle will be forgotten.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.